Today we'll be diving into a fascinating video published by a YouTube user who is aptly named Marina Shut Up, talking about how trans women aren't male. If you are also not a fan of science, then feel free to like this video and leave a comment down below, unless you're a bigot.
Gender is a universe.
All white people benefit from racism.
The health problems I have are more age-related than weight-related.
You are a white privileged male.
That's just obnoxious.
Peter
Sorry,
Lloyd,
you have to give me a
I think
chance
we'll
to
let you
respond to
carry
that.
Patriarchy.
Ugh, I can already feel the trolls now. Hey friends, we're going to be talking about the idea of gender and biological sex.
Now remember, if you want to be as woke as possible, always use air quotes when talking about biological sex, because if science has shown us anything over the past few years, it's that biological sex is just another social construct, like gender.
And what terminology is inclusive and necessary, and what terminology is just a subtle way to misgender someone. Do I imagine there will be many trolls on this video? Absolutely. Before we get into it, I do want to thank the sponsor of this video, Nurx, which is an online birth control app. Are you someone who is having sex and doesn't want to get pregnant? Or are you someone who has really heavy periods and just doesn't want to deal with that? There are so many reasons why cis women, trans men, non-binary people, etc. need birth control.
Is this a non-relevant conversation?
I feel like this is the future of contraceptives, and I'm really excited about it.
I'm also really excited about birth control. You can tell that that wasn't scripted in the slightest.
Anyway, back to the concept of gender and sex. I'm gonna start this video off with a disclaimer, as I often do when I talk about gender and issues that are relevant to trans folks. I am cisgender. I am not trans. So if I mess up, please let me know. I felt that it was important to talk about this on my channel because I often talk about feminism and gender-related issues, and I think it's really important to be mindful about the language we use and the terms we use to describe other people.
This also reminds me of the Debbie Hayton case. The Telegraph writes, "A transgender woman facing disciplinary action over a t-shirt stating that she is still biologically a man has been accused of hate speech." Debbie Hayton, a physics teacher in the Midlands, lives as a transgender woman after changing her gender from male to female in 2012. But unlike many people in the trans community, she does not believe her sex can be changed and is vocal about the fact that she will always biologically remain a man. The voice of reason. She is now potentially facing expulsion from the LGBT Committee of the Trades Union Congress, or TUC, for wearing a top adorned with the slogan, "Trans women are men, get over it." If the TUC rules against Miss Hayton, who has sat on the committee for 5 years, it would mean that even transgender people face being accused of transphobia for saying that they do not believe an individual can alter the sex they were assigned at birth. Miss Harrison told the tribunal, "The process of having surgery or hormone treatment cannot ultimately transform your sex. Every cell in my body has male chromosomes. I have a prostate. These things cannot be completely deconstructed. It is not possible to be biologically female, but that does not mean I can't live a fulfilling life being treated as a woman." Nicola Williams, founder of Fair Play for Women, said, "Accusations of transphobia are thrown at women so often for so little that the word has lost all meaning. When even trans people can get called transphobes, I hope people now understand how ludicrous and far-fetched these attacks have always been. The trans movement has been hijacked by gender extremists."
Wow, what a shocker. Marina's talking about language again. Literally 0 people are surprised. I've seen this quite a bit online, and since I'm cis, I'm sure I haven't experienced this nearly as much as trans folks just trying to exist online. And this comes from different sides of the political spectrum. Sometimes it's conservatives who just really want to be transphobic, and other times it's radical feminists who also just want to be really transphobic. So while they may disagree on most things politically, the connection here is transphobia.
The connection here is agreeing with cold hard scientific facts, and also the fact that anyone who disagrees with cold hard scientific facts, I'm saying facts too many times, will label everyone else as a transphobe and post YouTube videos to talk about their hurt fifis. Not really different from what I'm doing, but meh.
But TERFs and conservatives and everyone in between love to harass trans women online and remind them that they are male, or bio-males, biologically male, things like that. Fun dog whistles. Their argument is that male and female strictly refers to biological sex, so it's kind of like a I'm not touching you, I'm not touching you. My argument to this is that male and female are not and have never been strictly biological terms. They are heavily gendered. And everyone knows this. Everyone knows this.
Everyone knows this. If you say it enough times, it will become real.
Male and female are commonly used adjectives used to describe men and women. Men and women are social categories, they're gender identities, and they're ways that most people move about the world. But not all, because non-binary people exist.
Unfortunately. But we've gone over this so many times in the past, so I won't spend 5 hours talking about it. Non-binary does not exist. Non-binary is a fiction. Stop trying to make non-binary happen.
That is so...
Non-binary.
Gretchen, stop trying to make
Non-binary.
happen. It's not going to happen.
TERFs and conservatives and anyone who uses these arguments know this. You can't separate the terms male and female from the gendered contexts in which they are often used. If you say male, someone thinks of a man. If you say female, someone thinks of a woman. So using it as a weird gotcha for trans people in general is just shitty.
You know what this reminds me of? That Maya Forstater, a woman who, well, everyone says she was sacked, but it was just her contract wasn't renewed over offensive trans tweets that apparently she published to her Twitter profile. And what's interesting is that you can actually look at the judgment online. I'll post a link to it down below, where it says, on the 10th of August 2019, the claimant, so Maya Forstater, responded to a very strongly worded complaint to the Scout Association made by Gregor Murray, who describes himself as a non-binary person, who alleged that the claimant had been misgendering them. And Maya states that on Twitter I referred to Murray by the pronoun he. This was not purposeful or meant to cause harm. I had simply forgotten that this man demands to be referred to by the plural pronouns they and them. Murray states that my failure to use the pronoun they in relation to the complainant breaks the 3rd and 7th Scout laws. Grow the fuck up. Because Murray believes that Murray is not a man. Murray also calls it transphobic that I recognise a man when I see one. I disagree. In reality, Murray is a man. It is Murray's right to believe that Murray is not a man, but Murray cannot compel others to believe this. This is the same Murray who expressed happiness at the death of Guardian journalist Deborah Orr, who died of breast cancer at the age of 57, where he wrote, "You are free to mourn. I am free to be happy that today there is just a little less hate in the world." This is also the same man whose Twitter account is now protected. Aw, look at that face.
When talking about media, people will say like female superheroes or male protagonists. People aren't using it to mean, oh, they have XX chromosomes or XY chromosomes. They're using it to refer to gender. Second argument here is that most people don't know their chromosomes. They've never had them tested. And before you argue with this, have you specifically had your chromosomes tested? Because the answer is most likely no. People love to argue that biological sex is purely this binary thing, but actually even that is more nuanced and complicated than most people give it credit for. Not all trans people choose to transition medically, and that is super valid.
Well, no, the problem is that it is not super valid as you put it. Those who suffer from gender dysphoria for the most part undergo surgery or other medical procedures to transition physically to the opposite sex through top or bottom surgery and other procedures, and this also helps with their mental health and their body image with what they view themselves as mentally. A 2011 National Transgender Discrimination Survey found that 61% of trans and gender non-conforming respondents reported having medically transitioned, and 33% said they had surgically transitioned. And putting gender dysphoria aside for 1 second, if people now can identify as transsexual without actually having undergone any medical procedures, what's to stop more people like Gregor Murray, for example, in the Maya Forstater case, from coming forward and just accusing people of transphobia?
Like I mentioned earlier, most people do not have their chromosomes tested, so they don't actually know what their chromosomes are. You can't look at a person and tell if they have XX chromosomes, XY chromosomes, etc. And it's also just a meaningless category that has no real bearing on most people's everyday lives. Also, I'm gonna link below a great article by YouTuber, writer, and trans activist Zinnia Jones entitled "Medical Professionals Increasingly Agree Trans Women Are Female, Trans Men Are Male." So even in the healthcare field, probably one of the only places where biological sex would be relevant, even medical professionals are shifting towards language that is more inclusive and affirming of people's genders.
Now, while this may be true, there is also another problem that Massive Science points out in an article. They say that a complicating problem is that doctors can lack experience treating bodies that are neither male nor female, making it harder for them to understand their patients' needs. This is true not only for intersex people, but for transgender and non-binary patients as well, some of whom may be taking hormones so that their bodies more closely align with their gender identities. Some of these patients may not be seeking affirming medical interventions, and just want their pronouns respected. Aww. Both physical and psychological harm can be caused by the medical enforcement of a sex binary, making it harder for people to seek the medical help that they need in the future.
Also, some of you might be curious or unsure of alternative terminology that is more inclusive when talking about biological sex for whatever reason, and the preferred terminology as of right now is assigned female at birth or assigned male at birth. So while these terms still refer to male and female, they also acknowledge the fact that society has placed these labels on trans folks without their consent.